Stone of Venturing. Yeah.
All right. It's 12:03 and there's a fair number of people in the audience, so we're going to get started. Once again, my name is Jim Tung. I'm a member of the Portland section of the American Chemical Society, and I am also a member of the steering committee for the Oregon Science Startup Forum. This is our final event for the week. One of my favorites, which is the pitch event, where we will have two startup companies pitching in front of our panel of experts. Rita Hansen of Onboard Dynamics, Genevieve Lemarchal of Aventurine, and Skip Rung of Onami. So we will have our pitch experts give their introduction, and then we'll have Luke Letkus of Aromatics give a pitch, and then there'll be some critique, and then we'll have our second company, which is Daniel Freed of GeneGazer, give his pitch, and then there will be some time for some interaction there. So thank you very much, and so I'm happy to turn this over first to Rita Hansen of Onboard Dynamics. Rita, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Rita Hansen. Thank you, Jim, for giving me this honor of participating on the panel, for listening to the two pitches this afternoon. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Onboard Dynamics. We are based here in Bend, Oregon. We are a spin out from Oregon State University, and we have developed a unique way of compressing natural gas, whether it is conventional geologic based or from a renewable source. And the problem we are solving is driving adoption of natural gas as a transportation fuel, where that makes sense for medium and heavy duty trucks, but we're now also starting to solve some critical problems for the natural gas pipeline industry, and we have a really robust product roadmap. So I've been privileged to be part of the OSSF forums for the last few years, and so I just have always, just a few years ago, I was walking in all of your steps. So I am a first-time CEO, and all I can do is share my experiences with you all so that you can learn from my mistakes. So like I said, I'm happy to be on this panel, and I will be giving my feedback later. So on to the next person.
Thank you, Rita. Genevieve?
Sure. Let me start my video. So I don't have great Wi-Fi where I'm at, so hopefully the audio is good, but I'm going to be probably just keeping my video on and off to conserve bandwidth. My name is Genevieve Lemarchal. I am a partner at Aventurine, which is an early stage fund and advisory specializing in new science and deep technology. So we focus on intellectual property, foundational IP, and starting ventures from there. So my particular area of expertise is turning what we would just loosely classify as inventions into fundable actual company opportunities that, and then also helping them to raise the funding and do that, and working with directly with entrepreneurs to basically go to market, to scale, to bring in their initial cohorts of customers and things like that. So I've been involved in venture capital I would say I'm pretty new in venture. I've only been doing this for about 5 years. Before that, I've been a serial entrepreneur. So I have been a CEO. I've been early kind of executive. I've been sort of key sort of consultant, and I currently advise a wide-ranging portfolio of technology companies as well as a formal advisor. And I'm trying to say, so I am an Oregonian, even though I'm down in California right now. And I'm really excited to be here and meet all of you guys.
Thank you, Genevieve. Skip?
Skip Rung. So I'm the president and executive director of ONAMI, which is a nonprofit that works with science-based companies in Oregon. We're an economic development project. We've invested in and supported about 55 companies since 2006. Onboard Dynamics is one we're particularly proud of, Rita's company, and a number of others that have collectively raised over $500 million in capital. So we specialize in getting involved at the earliest stages of commercialization. I'm also a member of the investment committee of the Oregon Venture Fund and an investor in several other companies. I'm on the board of directors of Moonshadow Mobile, which is a big data company serving the transportation industry. Welcome to my favorite event of the year, and I look forward to today's pitches.
Thank you, Skip. So our first pitcher is Aromatics. They are represented by their founders, Dr. Luke Lutkus and Dr. Teresa McCormick. Luke, I believe, will be giving the presentation, so I'm going to let him self-introduce and get started.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Luke. I'm going to share my screen here, and then Jim, if you can give me the okay that you can see everything all right.
Yep, we can see it.
Yep, I can see it.
So as Jim said, my name's Luke Lutkus and our company is Aromatics. So I was lucky enough to found Aromatics with Teresa McCormick, who was my PhD advisor at Portland State. And then John Harkness is actually CEO of a local startup around Portland, and he's kind of taken us under his wing. And we initially got funding from Portland State's University Venture Development Fund. And we recently graduated from the NSF I-Corps program, albeit it was a virtual program. If you're familiar with it, you have to do 100 interviews. So I think it was actually more difficult to do that virtually than to actually get to travel around for it. And so our technology is all about oxygen removal. And so that's pretty broad. And I'm going to actually start this kind of backwards and talk about our technology first. And so our technology allows us to basically filter oxygen out of the air, and so we can remove it. And I'm sure everyone here is thinking of about 1,000 different applications for this. And I think that was our biggest struggle as a startup, was figuring out where does this actually fit. And so you can look at it as taking oxygen out of somewhere or putting oxygen in somewhere. And we do have a provisional patent on this from Portland State University. And I'm guessing the market that we've actually landed on is one that no one's really thinking of. And so it's actually in fish transportation. So believe it or not, if you're able to make an anaerobic environment, so you take all the oxygen out of somewhere, and you have fish refrigerated, that increases its shelf life from 3 days now to 40 days. And so why is that so important? Well, now instead of having to use air freight, which is very expensive, you can actually use sea or ground freight. And so it took a lot of work to actually nail down this market, but I believe this is where we can have the biggest impact and the biggest benefit. And it's actually a very large market, as it's around $160 billion worth of fish each year. And so with this, if you're wondering how much more expensive it is to actually air freight, you can see that the cost per ton mile for air freight is actually about 100 times more than sea freight. And additionally, it's about 10 times less than if you were just on ground freight. And so we believe we could use our technology for either of these, essentially hooking up our system to a shipping container and removing all the oxygen. And so if you're thinking, well, you know, oxygen removal is not really a new technology, there are some other methods that you can use, but really none of them are quite as either green as our tech or self-sustaining. And so something like nitrogen tanks, yeah, you can overflow a shipping container with nitrogen, but eventually that's going to leak out, and you can't have, you know, 1,000 nitrogen tanks on this huge barge just continually feeding as it crosses the ocean. And then also with vacuum sealers, you think about the amount of plastic waste that those actually create, and they actually don't remove all of the oxygen. And so food can still spoil. And then there are those little iron packets, which basically remove oxygen. And so once those are released, or once they're around the atmosphere, they're just going to be completely used up. And so you'd actually have to, for a shipping container, you'd have to use about, I think it's 10 kilograms of this to really remove all the oxygen. And on such a long trip, so something that's 20 to 30 days, you're looking at, they're just going to be completely used up. But our technology is renewable, so it can absorb the oxygen and release it and just continue this cycle repeatedly. All right, and so with this, we're really excited about this path because it's, you know, a very clear value proposition, which we can extend the shelf life from 3 to 40 days, and it's a big market, but we really just see this as the beginning. And so there are a lot of other food products such as apples, avocados, coffee beans. All of these are very air sensitive or oxygen sensitive. And so we're excited to implement our technology in other areas, but we think fish is a great start. And so we're working with a company called Sealed Air to really implement our technology. All right. And that's all I have for you. Do you want me to keep sharing or stop sharing?
Let's ask the panel. Panelists, what do you think? Would you like to see the slides, or do we want to show?
Yeah, so Jim, I keep the slides up. I think it would be beneficial.
All right, that sounds good. All right.
People know they can move their slider, you know, to shrink the slide and grow the video panes if they want to in Zoom.
Right. Yeah.
So, Rita, do you want to go first?
Sure. I got lots of questions. So I'll start with one. This sounds really fascinating to me, and I just can't believe that it's never been put into practice before now. So, but the 160 billion, I'm going to focus on the $160 billion market. So is that based on the amount of fish sold worldwide, or is that based on transportation costs alone associated with fish?
So yeah, I have not been able to get those numbers. That's just the total available market of fish sold.
Of fish sold. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of examples, like when you say you're working with somebody called Sealed Air? Is that like, does that person or is that entity represent who your customer, like, is that a customer, or is that a customer prospect, or is that a technology provider?
Yeah, so that's a collaborator. And so basically what they do is they are a huge food packaging company. And so hopefully they'll be able to help us break into the market.
Okay, so and what is your tech, like what would a customer have to have physically at their site in order to perform this function of removing all the oxygen out of a container? I guess I didn't see a really good picture of what that might look like.
Yeah, and so we're still in the prototype phase, and I can pull this up again. But the way we envision it is really just this little box that is on the outside of the container, and you just
and when you say, excuse me, can I just, when you say little box, it's like, can you give me like kind of a sense of what that is and what you think your costs are going to be for that?
Yeah, so right now, I think our costs, and based on our prototype, it really only took us about $30 to make our prototype. And so the chemicals are very cheap. They're made on a ton scale annually. And we actually do have a connection with, so the main chemical we use, there's an agricultural company that makes it. And so if we went to like a chemical company, it's kind of specialty. So they would be like, you know, probably $10,000 per liter, but this company, it's more like $100 per liter.
Got it. Okay, well, I have more questions, but I don't want to dominate. So I'll let you go ahead, Jim, and move on, and we can come back to me.
That sounds good. Genevieve, do you have any questions?
Yeah. So have you done any initial testing of this with that time frame of like 30 days to see how the taste and the quality of the fish is affected after it's gone through this process and shipped for that amount of time?
So we haven't yet. It is based on prior research, though. And yeah, basically the idea is that, you know, the quality goes significantly down if you just really freeze fish, right? And so the idea is to keep them cold, but if you remove the oxygen, that's when you can get up to that 40 days.
Right, but you haven't had a chance to like take some oxygen out of some fish, let it sit for 40 days. Then
yeah, it's been tough with
okay.
with just getting locked out of the lab and stuff.
Right.
You know, we're a bit behind on where we want to be, so we kind of have to take some other people's words for it when it comes to this stuff.
Gotcha.
My turn? Okay.
Go ahead, Skip.
Okay, so Rita, got into the subject of market and customer understanding. I wholeheartedly second that. And Genevieve, I asked you something else I was going to ask, which is where you stood on proof of concept preliminary data. So I agree with that. I think investors are going to want to hear more about the benefit to customers. So customer economics, what your product, will cost, how it saves them. And so, the I-Corps program, hopefully gave you some insight, talking to real customers. All that said, I love your choice of market, compared to others that you might have gone after with this technology. There have been companies funded very heavily to solve the problem of food spoilage. And so high value food spoilage is a great market.
Yeah, it took us forever to really, nail down our market. Believe me, we've looked at anywhere oxygen is used or needed to be removed. And so it's been a struggle. And I think it's been like 2 weeks since we settled on this. So whole new pitch. And all these questions, yeah, I need to figure out these numbers. I totally agree on
and it's a good market regionally. I mean, there are all kinds of seafood processors here, that harvest, store, ship, all of that. So
one question or idea or something is potentially there's a pathway forward for this through like the USDA or maybe even like certain international aid organizations like USAID or something like that, because of how crops are subsidized and how we are shipping crops to certain developing countries. Not just us, but maybe even, other countries shipping crops around to certain places. Like would the optimization of how fresh crops can get from, for example, California to, Kiribati or whatever like that, or Africa or something like that, be something that those organizations might be interested in either supporting or funding or taking a look at this technology for themselves and for their own usage?
You said that was USAID?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would be USAID. I mean, I'm not sure who are like the aid and economic aid organizations, but there's another one that actually is coming to mind for me that would be really potentially interesting, which is Rotary International has this organization called ShelterBox. And they're pretty innovative, ShelterBox. It's started by some former, I think it's Navy or military people, and they're first responders. So they keep these boxes that are totally self-contained on former like aircraft carriers and things that have been decommissioned. And when there's a disaster, like someplace like Haiti, for example, they are the first people on site. They're unloading these boxes, which include, tents and water purification systems and provisions for them to survive when their entire infrastructure has been completely decimated. They can survive, I think, for up to 6 months or a long time, a single family off of one shelter box. So that makes it really interesting for other types of applications, because obviously I think the shelter boxes come with MREs in them, but they can't access fresh fruits, vegetables, and produce. So if there was a natural disaster somewhere like the earthquake in Haiti and shelter box is first on site, how might an organization like that be able to leverage this technology? And, you know, they're an NGO, so I think they've got a little bit more freedom to be a little more innovative than some other ones do. So I'm just thinking about organizations such as that one.
No, that'd be great to check out. And yeah, we really like the idea. We've kind of talked about it before. It's just for places without the infrastructure to have, you know, refrigerators. Typically, after a meal, you throw away any leftovers. They're just gone because you can't store them. So with this, it's really low energy consumption, and so you could hook up a little solar panel and run it. And so we really like that route, but we just honestly have had no idea where to start. So I think that'd be a great idea to talk to Rotary International or this USAID and sort of see if there is a need.
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm thinking about, I don't know if it would be USAID or someone like this, but the organizations that are particularly interested in nutrition and things like that, especially in developing nations and countries that have lower access to nutrient diversity in their diets because of their inability to grow crops. And I'm just thinking, like, some of those organizations may be more apt to adopt a technology that's more nascent than like the US government might, or some organization that's trying to ship bluefin tuna, and, you know, like, it needs to be, they're willing to pay rather than risk, you know, something like that.
Right.
Let me just chime in also. Launch Alaska is an accelerator program that is focused on sustainability and across all aspects. Food is one of them. So in our own, if you think about where in the U.S. geography would technology like this really benefit, it's up in the Alaska region. So whether it's fish coming down, or as Genevieve was talking about, trying to preserve food that's traveling up there, you know, you want to, it's just, I won't, you know, take up time here, Luke and Teresa, but I can absolutely connect you with the folks up there since we're a portfolio company.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
And it's, you know, it's not quite international, but it's definitely quasi-international, but very, very welcoming to OSU technologies and Oregon technologies. And I know, Jim, you opened it up to the audience, so there's a bunch of questions there too as well. And somebody mentioned Oxfam, which is absolutely the other NGO that I would recommend internationally.
So there's a question from the audience that basically asks, how would a fishing boat that uses competing solutions apply your solution? How much money would it save per boat annually? In other words, what would a boat have to remove, and then how much money would it cost to kind of put your solution in?
Yeah, so typically with the shipping boats, they're actually stored in water, and so we're really looking at the big, you know, shipping containers, the sea freight. Once all the fish are collected at a central location and then shipped on to market, rather than just like a small boat or, you know, a mid-sized fishing boat. We're looking at the actual transporters who could be transporting, you know, a huge variety of things beyond just fish.
There's a technology question, and I note that we are broadcasting to the internet and nobody signed an NDA, but it says, your technology suggests you would drive the process using a photochemical reaction. What light source are you using? If so, and is it renewable? And if it's solar, would you be able to address the round-the-clock issue?
Yeah, no, that's very, very good. I didn't think anyone would realize that. Yeah, we are using a photochemical reaction, and we plan on just using red LEDs, really. In theory, we could use solar, but there is that issue. So perhaps you would have to be putting something in during the day to be left overnight to use the sun. Otherwise, you're going to need some sort of light source to have this actually run.
And so you're going to need continuous electrical power of some sort, which of course, may limit or help you focus on, application settings.
So
I
there's
would,
another.
look hard for customer pain, as you choose, your initial market. Without that, I think you'll have a hard time getting traction, but find out who really, really wants this.
Yeah.
So round numbers, I'm curious. So this is my question. There is an audience question about the size of the device for like, let's say like a standard 44 foot, shipping container or something like that. 53-foot shipping container. What size of the device? And then the other question that I have is kind of round numbers. Is this like a $10,000 box, a $50,000 box, or a $1,000 box?
Great question. Yeah. And as far as the pricing, I honestly don't know yet. I had the capstone from PSU. Their business students did a project on this, and they came back and they told me I should sell it for $300K. I'm not positive on the logic behind it. It seems a little high to me, but yeah, I think that's something we need to work towards, is really nailing down how much are we saving you per year, and then work out the price from there.
Right, Luke, I think the question is more, so it's like cost versus price. Those are clearly two different animals.
Yeah.
What do you think your costs might come in at? I heard you say $30 earlier, but that was
for our prototype. Yeah.
Yeah, but to vacuum, not vacuum, but to remove all the oxygen from a container of, fish, do you have any idea? Is it like Jim was saying, 300, 3,000, 30,000, do you have any idea, any notion about costs?
Yeah, I mean, my guess would be in the tens of thousands, but we're gonna have to be selling, multiple of these units, and if you look at just how many shipping containers, how many tons of food is actually shipped, I don't think that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And then sorry.
No, and I was just going to say, if there's any way where you can become the service as opposed to having to enter into direct sales, just coming from somebody who knows.
Yeah.
Being a, aromatics as a service versus a direct sale of a device, that recurring revenue is obviously way more powerful and palatable to investors.
Right. Yeah. And then as far as size, I think when we calculate it out, as far as the actual chemicals, it's going to be about 500 mils for a shipping container. And we could evacuate that within about 2 hours. Sorry, Jim, what else did you ask?
No, I think that's it, because this has actually been, so first, thank you for being our first presenter, and if you could unshare your screen.
Yeah.
One late hit from me, and that is a consumable is not necessarily a bad thing, either for you or the customer, and I'll just let it go with that.
So there are quite a number of comments in the chat box, Luke, so please do take the opportunity to take a look at those. So our next, so also everybody, if you have an opportunity to visually give Luke a hand for a great presentation, that is very welcome.
Yeah, good job. That's the main thing. Good job.
And then our next presenter is Daniel Freed of GeneGazer, and I'll let him introduce himself. Daniel.
Hello. Thank you, Jim. Thanks everyone for being here. My name's Daniel Freed. I'm the CEO of GeneGazer, and just let me launch the screen share.
Yep.
Through okay?
Coming through.
Great. So Gene Gazer provides over-the-counter personalized nutrition for mental health treatment and support. The bread you ate this morning was fortified with folic acid, and it has been since about 1996. Folic acid is been one of the most successful public health programs ever done. It has massively reduced the amount of birth defects from neural tube closure issues. But about 1 in 3 adults have changes to the way that their bodies process these B vitamins, which increase their risk of depression. It also increases the risk of things like heart disease and certain cancers. So Gene Gazer is developing a digital health platform to take personal and family health history and then infer genotype and then personalized treatment. This is all based on folate-mediated 1-carbon metabolism, also called the folate cycle. This diagram is a highly simplified view of some of the important processes, and notably, folate is required to produce dopamine and serotonin. It also degrades catecholamines into norepinephrine. It's used in methylation of DNA and produces the largest balance of phosphatidylcholine for skin and nerves. So personalized vitamin treatment can bypass these broken enzymes, all of the various research single nucleotide polymorphisms in this overall system. This would allow self-medication for minor health issues, which is a driving factor in the supplement industry. And reduced folate is low cost, high margin, and low risk. Overall, people are more likely to answer health history questions than to submit to full genetic testing, and it is safer because it preserves their privacy in a relative way. And about 1 in 5 adults have had mental health symptoms in the last year, but less than half of them will receive treatment. So overall, the market is about $41 billion spent on supplements, and 55% of adults take supplements daily. There's about $238 billion in the US spent on mental health costs, and 117 million US adults live in areas rated deficient in mental health professionals. We estimate there's about $525 million capturing only 1/4 of mental health spending. We would be a subscription service, currently priced at $35 a month for 70 personalized supplement capsules. We estimate this would have a 33% margin at an 85% retention rate, and customer lifetime values are between $350 and $1,000 depending on retention rate. The biggest problem is vitamin companies frankly sell snake oil. They have low quality products and they make dubious health claims. Our solution is to target supplements to the metabolic needs, so not going with the shotgun approach, and to pursue FDA labeling for the health claims. There are currently prescription folate supplements, notably Deplin, that have on-label uses for treatment-resistant depression. So we would like to receive over-the-counter labeling in the same, or using the same stuff. Our company team is strong and diverse. We have a data scientist, a neuropsychiatrist, a civil rights attorney, an epidemiologist, and a clinical director, and myself. And we were founded in 2018 as an Oregon C Corporation. We were awarded a Phase 0 grant in 2019. We are currently submitting and accepted to the NSF's SBIR program, and we have an IRB approval for our research and 3+ years of clinical development. Overall, combining genetics, digital health, and personalized supplementation is an accessible, low risk, and high impact intervention for mental health. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel. Rita, over to you.
Wow. Okay. So not my area of expertise. So like the one, if you want to go back to like your second slide, that's really like that slide, figure 2. Wow. I don't know what, maybe, don't know what you're trying to communicate, but my question to you, I mean, this looks, you say this is simplified, and I'm looking at this and going, oh my goodness, this is pretty complex. in a nutshell, as I understand, and I'm going to play back to you, Daniel, you provide I answer questions and you interpret those questions, and you're able to tell me without any kind of testing or anything, what possible supplement program I should be on to make sure that my body is correctly synthesizing all the, or I don't know if that's the right word, my diet and my personal mental health is at tip-top shape. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And have you proven that?
So there's a lot of research in mental health about the folate system. Some of the earliest research is in the 1970s, and the enzymes were elucidated in the 1980s. So this is a relatively old area of research. Folate is an effective treatment in depression, and there's all kinds of weirdness with those studies between using methylfolate or folic acid. So we would be using methylfolate, which is the reduced form of folate, as opposed to folic acid, which is the common synthetic form that is used in almost all supplements. So we would be using highly targeted things which essentially bypass that big yellow gear that says MTHFR. That is the most well-known of the changes is C677T. There's a table at the bottom with the SNPs and the enzymes. So that is the starting point. There are a number of cofactors, B12 being the most important one of them, along with metals and other things like betaine or trimethylglycine, if you prefer the chemical terms. So those things taken together can serve to bypass the issues with the overall enzymatic system.
So have you, how big, you've obviously, you ask me questions that I will answer, and that gives you enough information to determine what supplements I should be taking in order to achieve the best mental health. And
correct.
Okay. And how big is your body of research that, I mean, how many people have you actually tested?
So that is the focus. That is the focus of our SBIR grant, is doing the research ourselves. But
Okay.
there has been a number of double-blind studies. There's a very nice one out of Boston Medical and Harvard that actually stratifies treatment-resistant depression patients by these factors, and then does a double-blind study using methylfolate supplementation as adjunctive treatment in addition to SSRIs. And that was successful.
Okay, but that was done by somebody else. That wasn't based on your line of questions.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're pretty early then in this whole projection of where you want to get to and how long do you think that process is going to be before this product is available on the marketplace?
It all depends on if you think the FDA regulation and actually going through the song and dance is important. We could, in theory, throw this out there right now. We have enough data from the clinic. Full disclosure, it's my father's clinic. But we have a couple hundred responses to our questionnaire and 30 odd genetic tests. The methylfolate cycle is actually on a lot of people's panels. GeneSight, which is used to predict treatment response to various antidepressants, just reports MTHFR. It doesn't report this whole battery of folate cycle genes that we're interested in, but it does report some of the most important ones.
Got it. Well, it's a very, very highly technical subject matter. It's going to be your job is going to be over the years as you obviously, as you work on your research and you get all that, is to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, but is to put it more in layman's terms so that people like me who are going to write the checks can immediately grasp, okay, so what's the problem you're solving? What is the product? How is it going to be applied in the marketplace? Why would I buy this? Because you've demonstrated obviously that you got the results, and have that I'm surprised you've already come up with your business model of the $35 per month for the so is that including, that is actually receiving supplements every month from your organization?
Yep. That was all pretty easy to work out.
Okay. Okay. I'll let Skip and Genevieve have a hand at you.
All right, Genevieve.
Thank you.
So don't take this the wrong way, but I don't actually think there's anything proprietary here. I think it's a public health company in my opinion, and
Yes.
you're basically making it more accessible for people who might feel that they have some sort of mental wellness vulnerabilities to just add some additional supplementation to their existing lifestyle, right? It's no diagnostic. It's not, there is no, it's for therapeutic benefit only, but not like medical therapeutic, just sort of like wellness. It's a wellness company, right?
And that is the weird point. Yes, we could roll all of this out in a month and be a wellness company, correct?
Yeah.
But we're working on the SBIR grant to try to not be a wellness company. We would actually like to make medical claims because that's where all of the weirdness comes in. And that would be your actual competitive advantage, coupled with the predictive programming, causal model, whatever you want to call it, using the health history questionnaire.
Right. So anything that would be proprietary or intellectual property based here would be lying in your algorithms and your predictive models and programming, not necessarily in. So then here's a question. If you are gathering people's data in terms of just they're answering a questionnaire, you're going to have highly, highly, highly subjective data as inputs into your algorithms. So it's like, if you ask me on a certain day how I feel, I'm going to give you a different opinion than the next day. Or something like that. So, and then I'm thinking about like, metabolomics. And
Yes.
I think, if you're thinking about moving forward and continuing to build out your body of research, so you do have something here, depression and all of that is, basically chemical imbalances in the brain and whatever, but it's also affected by, certain synaptic architecture and characteristics in your neurocognitive profiles. So if we're looking at this from that standpoint, that would essentially mean that you'd have to do data collection from your customers that is not just their questionnaire. So it's not necessarily subjective. You'd need to start gathering samples, right?
Yes, and we're working on that.
Okay. So it would be some sort of collection kit in the future where you'd be gathering samples of saliva, blood, something like that, for people, and then analyzing it. And then that would be the inputs into your algorithms and not so much the just questionnaire, but it's starting with the questionnaire today.
Yes, and that is actually the focus of our SBIR research. We are going out of left field and trying to crowdsource this data, so paying for existing genetic tests online and then getting people to take our survey. So that would be, that's our rapid model to use the SBIR funds to validate this.
Okay. I think I understand. Honestly, just from like a going to market standpoint and a venture capital standpoint, what we're just talking about, where you're going, that's going to be very expensive.
Yes.
I'm working on a company like that myself right now. So one of the reasons why I'm in San Diego or going to San Diego for a while and in the neurocognitive space, and it's going to cost us probably close to $5 million this year to get it to market.
Yep.
And that is just for the direct-to-consumer test. That is not our FDA-regulated point-of-care test. And so, but we are going to market with a direct-to-consumer test because we can get into revenue quicker, and we can start to generate that revenue and shorten our trajectory of growth and start to impact more people and things like that. So, like, you know, the only risk factor I see with you going straight direct to consumer is the trust. I mean, you're selling a supplement that is already well known and accepted as being something that we should all be taking. So no one's going to argue with you about, you know, the benefits of folate or methylfolate, depending on, but also but the one thing is, if people are only giving their subjective data, there's gonna be that like weird trust issue of like, well, how do they know, and But also, I think, isn't there a marker within your blood metabolome that identifies whether methylfolate or regular folate can or cannot be absorbed into your body? So don't you have to find some way to get a test anyway?
Okay, so the tests for folate in blood are dominated by muscle function. So the metabolome in the brain is protected by the blood-brain barrier. So folate status in the brain is actually poorly predicted by blood folate, and bound folate to red blood cells is a relatively expensive test versus a free folate test from plasma. So free folate is the most common one, and the other proxy is homocysteine. Homocystinuria is a classic one, although the deficiencies in folate that we're looking for generally won't show up as homocystinuria. Homocystinuria is only generally for people who are homozygous in C677T and then have some additional issue. So you can still have both of the SNPs, or both of the best research SNPs, and not have classical homocystinuria.
Got it. One last question. Can you go back to your team slide? Okay. I don't see anyone on here who's a product person or a commercialization person.
True.
So I definitely recommend that you get that ASAP. And if you and I want to talk offline about that, I have some people that I can recommend to you for you to talk with who have experience in your space with direct-to-consumer tests. Because I would not take your next step without that person. And I have a few people who are actually working with me on my neurocognitive decline test that you could maybe chat with them and see if that I think have really good experience, particularly in Europe. And I see that the European market might be a really an easy foray for you to get into, because there's a lot of support in Europe for the type of research that you're doing here.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you.
You can get my number from or not my number, I'm sorry. You can get my email, and we can chat offline, and I can make some recommendations for you.
That'd be great.
Okay,
Yep,
this is
over to you.
This is not my field either, but I do have a couple of questions. We'll just start with maybe a technical matter. The NSF SBR program does not fund human trials. You probably know that.
Yep.
And they also do not fund market research. They fund de-risking R&D. So I trust that the proposal you've submitted to them is seen by them as that.
Correct. We are fully accepted to submit a proposal, and it is all based on data collection and algorithm training.
Okay. Now your business model, it sounds like you are starting with a psychology or a counseling practice, and one result of having visited with the client or the patient is, selling a subscription of some well-known supplements. Am I correct in thinking that's your business model? It starts with an office visit?
Ideally, Gene Gazer, no, but we also aren't currently selling supplements to clients because of just general risk right there.
Okay.
But we do recommend certain supplements. We have a favorite company, Thorne Labs, and we recommend, or my father recommends those products. So that's really how we got started with this was, well, here's some easy things you can do to improve your mental health.
Okay, and so of course now you're borderline, practicing medicine, with that, and you're hoping that the FDA will give you some kind of clearance to do that. I'm going to also echo Rita's comment that the gears slide doesn't really speak to me, as a consumer, feeling like I'm being snowed here. Why should I buy this? What is my customer pain that would make me want your product it sounds like you're going to try to get me to buy online?
The biggest thing is treatment-resistant depression. That's really where we got started with this. The biggest reason to take methylfolate in the mental health space is it does significantly increase treatment response, especially to SSRIs. So there's really great research that's already been done, real double-blind studies about taking methylfolate in addition to a SSRI or an NSSRI. So both of those, that is really our starting point for the business. And realistically, it is people who have either not received mental health care treatment or people who have failed out of mental health care treatment who are the initial target market for this.
So why would they, so basically they're going to give up on psychiatrists and come to you?
No, they're going to not have treatment response. The STAR-D, there's a massive longitudinal study of treatment response in psychology using a standard formula for prescribing drugs. It has like 5 levels to get your 5 different drugs and treatment response and therapy. About 60% of people do not respond to the initial treatment, give or take, and drop out or move on to the next level of the study. In this, I think it's like a 5,000 person study. It's a massive study. So we would be focused on the people who have failed out. They've stopped taking their meds because their side effects are bad, because they don't have good insurance to keep paying for their meds, because they don't have quick access to psychological services. I mean, 117 million people. Essentially, if you live outside of a big city, you're unlikely to get counseling services.
And if they were aware of that, they could go buy the methylfolate or the folate today, or it's not that simple?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Okay. I agree with Genevieve's suggestion to get a product person, understand your whole product and why customers should want to buy it.
Yeah, this is Rita. I would, as I've been listening to you, Daniel, speak to Genevieve and Skip, a slide that might really work well for you if you are so inclined to be out there telling your story. You've got you probably have different audiences. You have a highly technical audience who would appreciate something like this. But then for the general, audience, like if you were to get on stage at the BBC, or if you were to, just be in a forum like this, you want to take this information and really distill it down into some very basic inputs, outputs, and benefits, right? Basic value proposition here. Why would somebody want to sign up for this? A slide that might be also really beneficial is what is the go-to-market strategy or timeline? Like these are the, this is where we are today. These are the steps that have to happen before we are actually putting a beta product even out into the marketplace. And then for what period of time before you're ready to scale up. But, it's like I said, it's highly technical, and you're just going to have to play to 2 different kinds of audiences, I think. So,
yeah.
And if you're you're getting funding from, I know Genevieve was talking about the European market, which is absolutely true, but you have to be careful about what you can spend your dollars on when you're receiving taxpayer dollars.
Yes.
You cannot go overseas to launch a product, yet leveraging those dollars. You're going to have to wait, but that very, very well may be, where this product may get more traction because of their, mindset.
Totally.
But good job, good job to both presenters actually for, putting yourself out there.
So go ahead, Skip.
I was going to say, Daniel, are you thinking that you're going to be raising capital, or maybe you don't think you need to do that?
I think the big thing for us is working on the NSF portion or the research portion, however you want to think about that. We need to actually build this algorithm before we search for real venture capital. So that's a big reason for me practicing the pitch.
Yeah. Good luck on that. I hope that works out.
Yeah, me too.
I would say my advice to you as being in venture capital is you have potential, but you are definitely not there yet. So don't waste your time. Focus on your business and focus on the core, and de-risking what you've got. You're not even really at de-risking yet. You're still kind of building, but and then go for venture capital, because if you go too early, you're just going to spin your wheels and you'll waste your time. When you're actually ready for venture, and things are in place, it'll just flow a lot easier, Not to say it'll be like super easy. It never is, but it'll be easier.
But I think you'll need a defendable proprietary asset, and hopefully this research will get you to that.
That's our hope too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody.
I mean, it'll be I don't actually know, just FYI, I don't know if what the algorithm that you would creating would be defendable. I think it would be a trade secret.
Correct. That's our understanding too.
Or protectable.
Okay. Yeah. High five.
So first, thank you, Daniel, for a great presentation. And thank you also to Luke for a great presentation. Thank you, Rita and Skip and Genevieve, for giving of your time. We all learned a lot from this process today. This is really great and very enthusiastic about it. Take a moment to thank our sponsors, Onami, Otrati, Illumina, the Berglund Center at Pacific University, and Virtue Lab. And then finally, I want to thank all of you for spending quite a few days this week with us. And please I'm going to unmute everybody and if I can, and say hello, and thank you very much, and we will see you next year.
Thanks, everybody.
Hopefully in person, Jim.
Yes,
Thank
hopefully in
you.
person.
Yeah.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Take care. Thanks for presenting. Good job.